What's up, everybody? How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited for this demo.
Me too. I'm excited for this demo. So the last episode, just to summarize if you missed it, we talked about how a lot of potential Pavilion members, so people that are interested in joining the Pavilion B2B go-to-market community, are looking to expense their membership. And we have a generic template, which is great. It's right here. It's a nice template. They can copy, they can paste it. But a lot of folks want something more customizable, and we also want to eliminate friction to help them get their membership paid for by their company. So we were thinking, wow, what if we just made a way for AI to just automatically generate a template based upon everything Pavilion offers as it relates to what they do as a professional, whether they're in sales, marketing, customer success, etc. So last episode, we walked through the build. Brian, you and I huddled, gosh, it was probably 30 minutes and just knocked it out in Copy AI. And here we are. We got the final product. So
ready to go.
Final product is people jump in, they put their email, their LinkedIn URL. And Brian, this is a brand new thing. How will Pavilion help you perform better at your job? This was your idea to add. Why did we decide to do that?
Well, I think there's two things about this, and the larger context for our audience is if you have any kind of a process where someone needs to make an case internally for what you do, I think this demo has a lot to offer. One of the early points of feedback, Josh, that you got when we showed people the AI-generated content, which we always like to do, as early as possible, is they said, well, it feels like kind of salesy, too generic, and really, if you're reaching out to your manager asking for approval for an L&D expense, you should be able to directly tie it to challenges you're working on today or goals that you have. And what we've seen is AI is actually pretty good at proposing those things just based on the role and what that person does and the overall information that Pavilion provides. But by having them put in a sentence, it gives we can basically provide AI with a focusing lens in terms of what the key themes might be.
Exactly, I love it, and I had a few people test this out, including our Boston chapter head, Susan Whitmore, and she's responsible for managing the Boston chapter, all the members within the Boston chapter, whether they're interested in joining or they're active members and they're happy and they're engaging it with events. So she does it all. Amazing person. And I shared this with her because she slacked me and said, hey, look, I am thinking about different ways that we can help our members pitch expensing the Pavilion membership. It was perfect timing. So I just sent her this link and this was her output. So the output of that email is essentially many of our members expense their Pavilion membership. We created a personalized email template, and using Copy AI, we were able to generate this template for her, this email template that connected relevant courses to what she does. And Susan, she's an operator. She works for tax.com. I'll just share her LinkedIn profile so we can compare. But she is the VP of Revenue Operations. So she's really focused.
Could you zoom in on this one? Because I'm not able to read it at all. There we go. Great, yeah.
So this is her role. VP Revenue Operations, based in Boston. So she's really focused on building elite sales teams, driving operational efficiency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as you can see, the courses that it recommended for her are Revenue Architecture, which is, Brian, you've taken this course. It encompasses the whole go-to-market mission, right?
Yeah, really great course. Maybe that's actually the broader thing to say. So, as Pavilion has just been working so hard to add tremendous amounts of value to the community, your offerings grow and the complexity of those courses and offerings grow. And this is another really good example of if you have a lot of different products or services or a lot of different information that you can provide to people, being able to take their LinkedIn profile and have AI just pull out what might be relevant is proving surprisingly accurate in all of the use cases that we've looked at.
I think about it like, Brian, if I were, I just say, let's just pick a company here. If I were HubSpot and I were, HubSpot has a CRM, they have a marketing hub, they got a sales hub, they've got a lot of different sub products like you mentioned. if somebody came in with a role that matched better with one product than another, and the lead came in through a source that wasn't affiliated with any specific product interest, this could be a great way for you to sort of fine-tune that conversation down to what that person might be interested in based on their role.
And I would even go so far as, even if you have a single product, if a CRO is checking you out versus a RevOps versus a salesperson versus a sales director or a marketing director, how you're going to talk with them about the value that you create and their use case is different. And this is the beauty of, building these kind of like internal library of use cases to give the AI information that it can connect with. I'm gonna harp on something I harp on a lot, but a lot of the AI tools that are out there, even from the major providers, are very generic in the information they can provide. And so what I love about us, showing people how to build their own AI workflows is you really can tune it down to what's relevant. And I think you and I went through like 4 or 5 iterations before we were happy with both the brevity and the uniqueness of the information being provided here. But really love this because ultimately for Susan, all 3 of these courses are directly relevant to what you see she talks about are the key accomplishments that she has in her career. And that's what we're always looking for. We're always looking for that pattern match between where someone is and what they're focused on and what is relevant that you can offer or help with. So really love that. And I also like, one of the things I really like about the structure is it's very tactical. It's here's the things that can help me, and then it builds on that with benefits. And I think this is something that, a lot of times people tend to lead with benefits and then try to back them up. But I actually think being much more tactical, here's the specific things that would be useful to me, here's how it would benefit me, I think is a great flow.
It's awesome. So let's dig into how we actually built this. So as I mentioned earlier, this is getting deployed out of HubSpot. So essentially we have a workflow in HubSpot that when somebody fills out this form, it pushes the data from this form it goes into a workflow and then pushes that data through a webhook from that workflow into
Copy AI workflow. So this form is going to the Copy AI workflow and then to HubSpot, or do you have it going into HubSpot first?
So this form it's directly storing the data in HubSpot, and then from there, actually, you know what? Let's just show the workflow.
Why don't we show it?
Perfect. All right, so diving into the workflow in HubSpot, when somebody submits this expense membership form, which is this form right here, we're setting it as a marketing contact because we need to email them. We're pushing the data via webhook to a Zap that is then going to trigger the Copy AI workflow. So this is important. So we've got all the data from that form in this webhook, the email, the message, which the message is how Pavilion can help that person with their job, and then the LinkedIn profile URL. So we send that webhook. We wait 5 days. We wait until this thing called property value changed, and that property value is the expense membership email. So we're passing the email copy as well as the list of how Pavilion can help them. We included both of those in the email. We're passing the expense membership email directly out of Copy AI and updating that HubSpot contact record in that workflow. And that's what's really cool about Copy AI is you can make HubSpot updates directly in the workflow. So all I'm doing here is listening for, hey, has that property changed and is now known from not being known? Great, it is. So the workflow is already run. So now let's kick off this email. And in this case, we actually send it based upon the owner of the account, or the owner of the contact. So if it's Marshawn's lead, then we'll send it from Marshawn. If it's Colin's lead, we'll send it from Colin. Because again, these are, at least for this first use case, these are people that are considering membership and not people pitching renewal. We can have a separate workflow for that, but for now, this is the use case here.
Yeah, and I'd love to just zoom back to that delay for a second. So for those of you that are new to building AI workflows, this is probably one of the most critical pieces for you to think about. If you're just beginning, you might be trying to think about how someone can click a button and get a response right away. We'd encourage you not to chase that goal. It takes AI time to author these things and get them into your system. And so that if you just scroll up a little bit further, now we're talking a little bit about CRM design. Today, when you're using these types of AI tools, you're providing them with information and you're getting something back. And most startups that I'm seeing implement are adding fields into their CRM. Now, you could end up with a lot of additional CRM columns by taking this approach, but from a prototyping perspective and testing out a proof of concept, it really makes a lot of sense. And then groom those columns out if you choose to move to a different system for long-term usage. What I love about this is you're letting HubSpot be the source of truth. If the field gets updated, take the next action. If not, just wait. And so if there's any issues or problems that prevent that update from happening, the Zap breaks, the Copy AI workflow breaks in some way, shape, or form, you have a chance to intervene before it goes off. So I think this is a really durable way to design pretty much any AI workflow today.
Awesome. So what does that workflow look like? So the Zap took in the webhook with all the data, and then the step in Zapier was run Copy AI workflow. So it's as simple as that. So we now go in here, we have the input, which is the LinkedIn profile URL, the notes, how Pavilion would make them better at their job, and then email address. So we're passing all that data. And these were some of the changes that we made. So we had the scraped profile, but after that, we just had one big step, Brian, where we tried to build the email out entirely from one step instead of doing this prompt chaining type approach that you have been recommending since the beginning, and I am fully bought in on this approach. So would love to, just have you walk us through this, because this is just fundamentally what makes this workflow work so well.
Yeah, pretty much anytime I see, like a RevOps person get to like an 80% solution with AI, but the team, doesn't always feel like it's reliable or, valuable. And so the adoption isn't quite there. This is the reason. The reason is that they're going to ChatGPT, maybe using a Zap, and they're dropping a prompt with a ton of information in one go and getting something back. Now, as far as building your very first AI workflow for any process, that's totally fine, because you're going to learn right away where AI gets it wrong. And we've found that you should let it nudge you that way. Like if it's consistently getting something wrong, accept it. But then what do you do about it is the key. And what you're going to see here is we figured out how to break down this particular process into the items that we wanted to tune step by step. So if we start with role goals, we can make this really tangible. So we're going to scrape that LinkedIn profile, and then we're going to pull in the note of what they felt like was going to be helpful to them. And we are able to give the AI, you can see right here, the background, you are a career coach. Remember, we're almost always giving the AI a role. You're a career coach helping your client concisely identify what their priorities are and how they can be successful in their current role. Remember that commentary earlier about the feedback that we got where people said, well, it needs to be more focused. If you're going to ask your manager to sponsor this, it needs to be more focused on what your goals are. So we solved that one problem here. So rather than trying to solve that problem as a part of a much larger block of text, we're really just checking, okay, can the AI get this right? And then when it does, then we build the next step. What did you learn in going through this prompt build process, Josh?
So
on the role goals.
Yeah, so I've always been, at least like my early journey of AI was exactly what you mentioned, is let me see if I can design an amazing prompt and get the desired output from that amazing prompt. And then I would end up just banging my head against the wall trying to get the right output, because it would be like one tweak I would make to one part of the prompt would change maybe the entire rest of the output. And then I'd have to kind of work backwards to see what changed and then what do I need to fix to make this better moving forward. But when we did this together, I realized that you're really just taking it from the standpoint of if you were to do it yourself, or I were to do this myself and build it on my own. Because if I was building somebody's expense template, I would first check out their LinkedIn profile, and then I would see what do they do and what are they trying to accomplish, and how do I tie that to Pavilion. We're basically doing what the human mind would have done in their process and applying it to the workflow. That was like a light bulb moment for me, Brian, for this.
One of the things I really love about this prompt, which I now add in all the time, is the explain your reasoning. So there's two things that we wrestle with AI. One, we want AI to really unpack something. So we basically want it to generate a lot of content about something. Because we want to see that it's getting it, that it's grokking what we're going for, and it's pulling all the information in. And when we've done this really well, actually it can generate paragraphs of actually pretty useful text to use. So that's one thing that we want to do. But then on the other side, we want the AI to then radically narrow down to what is the most useful thing here, and say it concisely and in a single sentence. It's almost like we want it to write an essay and then boil that down to the most useful sentence. And so what we've done here is, and this is another great example of why splitting your prompts works. This prompt's job is actually to be very verbose. It's to give a lot, really unpack how the AI is thinking and why it's thinking about it. And then if we look at that output, we then get to evaluate and say, is it getting it? Yeah. So if we go, I think this is a great idea. If we go look at the role goals here, there you go. So it's taken that and it's boiled it down to that key sentence, which is accurate and also uses the words that they do in their own LinkedIn profile to describe their role, which I think is really powerful.
Awesome. So we've got that as that first step, or that third step, excuse me, or technically second step, and then we've got to go down the line. Let's connect the features to the role. And this was really interesting because before we try to do it all in one, as we mentioned, and we were trying to wrestle between scraping a web page to get information about Pavilion versus storing content in what Copy AI has as what they call the info base. And uploaded a list of all the features from our pricing page of the executive membership, updated the pitch deck that our sales team uses that is tried and true, effective. It is what the team has been using for the last 6 months and has really standardized how we explain membership. So use what's already working, share a list of features, share the goals of that person in their role, like you mentioned earlier, and then scrape the profile, how Pavilion membership will benefit their role. And then we want to understand how Pavilion's features could connect them with their role. So this was an interesting way, Brian. I liked how we set the background here. It's like the specificity here. You are a mentor, just giving them a role, helping a professional make the case for their company and invest in their career.
Yeah, and this is a good example of where now we're pulling all this information into one go. Last time we tested against, basically how do you pattern match between the prospect that you're communicating with and the value that you provide. We tested, parsing Pavilion's own website versus doing it with PDFs and so on. The nice thing about this is, the executive membership deck being an example, is you could build a slide deck or a doc that is really specific to your use case of all the potential benefits and information that's there and upload it. And in some use cases, that's really worthwhile. In Pavilion's case, your offerings are changing all the time. The courses that are available each year and so on. And so making it an asset that your team is already going to produce and then figure out how to prompt engineer it to get the right outset is a much more sustainable way to go. And that's what we've done here.
So if we look at the output, it's writing it like we told it to. We told it to write like you're a mentor trying to get somebody to pitch their membership. So it's writing it basically to Marshawn in this case. And as you can see, it's pretty verbose, but it's great content.
Yeah, this is very GPT style writing going on right here. This is not something you want to send. It's obviously written by AI.
So to solve for that, we then created a list of benefits.
So you're basically taking all of that really wordy stuff and you're having it boil it down to bullet points. So you're already having the AI do the work of simplifying and being a lot more specific. And when I look at those bullet points, like the block text is like, it's in there, it makes sense, but wow, there's a lot of reuse of the same phrases and words. Yep. Boiling it down to a bulleted list still gives the AI the same anchor content, but now it's doing it in a form that's much more precise.
And what's great about this, Brian, is I don't have to just pull from the final step, which is the email. I can pass data into HubSpot from each individual step. That's what's so freaking cool about this. So in this case, I just said, hey, encode this list in HTML format where each list item is, in this listicle HTML format. And that's what's able to pass into HubSpot as this list right here as the reasons why how Pavilion could help them in their role. So we're able to, and just so y'all know, if you pass data into a rich text field in HubSpot, which is how I figured out the best way to pass rich text data is just naturally using the rich text field, but you want to pass it in, if you're using it in a marketing email, you want to pass it in HTML format, because I spent a long time trying to format it. I was like, do I add a bunch of break tags? Do I, how do I do this? And I figured out the best way is just to tell it to do it in HTML format, and then as you can see here, it just pasted, and it's nice and beautiful and formatted directly in the email there.
Yeah, and let's jump back to the email real quick. So, because I think this is another good example. So if you scroll up, what you'll see is this is the example message that we've provided, but we also provided a bullet of all of the main points below. This is a really great example of solving the problem in a way that is human in the loop. In other words, we're providing an email that really you could just send as is, but we're also providing these bullets of all these other really specific items so that it's easy for the person to get other ideas or other language they can use to customize it in some way. One of the things I really encourage everyone to think about is any AI workflow that you're building, think about what the 80% solution would be and design the output to include ways for human beings to modify that output in a useful way that still cuts down on their research time and so on. So I really love these summary bullet points with the added benefit that you could just send it as is. It builds credibility. It shows some real thought to support the overall message as well. And there we go. We're going to write the business use case. So now we're pulling all that in. We're pulling in that list of benefits. We're pulling in the notes and the role and the university course. And now we're actually going to author the email. Maybe at this point, two things would be interesting to do. Maybe is really unpack, Josh, the prompt that you have here, but also show how you overcame the challenge with HubSpot needing to have HTML in order to send the email in a format that looked good.
Yeah. So where we struggled with this is how long does it need to be? How do we avoid making it sound like AI? Because we shared this earlier. And when we talked through Connect Pavilion features to the role, it felt very AI-y, I guess. And so we were like, how do we keep it short and sweet? How do we make it so that it's formatted in a nice an approach that we would have taken if we were to do it ourselves? And then we went down the path from there. And what I ended up having to do after, and this is what's important with building these AI workflows, whatever platform you're using to do these, it's really important to test as many variations of output. So I tested against a lot of different LinkedIn profiles, a lot of different types of people, to really make sure that the benefits that it was returning was what we intended and that there was no hallucination coming from the AI. So in this case, I told it, hey, don't mention a podcast, don't mention compensation benchmarks, because the way it was framing compensation was Pavilion can help you find your next job with understanding compensation, and then our On the Bench program, which is our program for people who are between roles. So obviously we don't, in an email pitching membership to your boss, you don't want to tell them it can help you find your next role, right? So, and then the other issue that I found in doing this is it would try to make up names of courses that didn't exist. So I was very, very precise here. I said, when you mention courses, make sure the course name matches one-to-one with the courses above. And the courses above are Pavilion courses, university courses. So I just reinforced the AI with the list of courses and then told it to match one-to-one. And then that is the reason for the courses right here, revenue architecture course, building a GDM leadership course. These are one-to-one matching what I provided AI in the knowledge base. So then we've got, again, going back to the specificity that Brian mentioned, and being setting a role for the AI. You're a persuasive sales representative who crafts compelling business cases for employees of companies to get approval. So this specificity was really important to help give background to the AI. And then the next step was really interesting, though, because what it was doing is it was writing it, and we told it to write the email in the tone of the person in the LinkedIn scrape. Brian, this was your idea, and I thought it was brilliant because it provided that almost like added another layer of personalization that shaped how the value props were explained. It wasn't just the tone, it was also formatting of it too. It was really fascinating.
This next generation form letter is that it defaults to sounding like you. So let's look at that reset tone step and compare.
Cool.
Yes, we've got the write the business case here. You can see that, still pretty well written, still specific. We've seen that refinement really help. But if we go down a little bit further to that tone, this is now formatted to be in HubSpot, but you'll also see that the language is going to be a lot more varied and more specific to the individual, which is great. Ultimately, if we're helping someone draft something, the more it's in their own voice, the easier it's going to be, and the more confident they're going to be in editing it.
Yep. So when we did the reset tone step, we just told it to rewrite the business case, and again, a friendly, personable tone. And then Brian, to counteract the AI challenge, keep sentences relatively short, no exclamations, and don't repeat yourself. Yep. This I found to be really important. So we started out in the initial build, it's like, don't repeat yourself. That's important for AI because AI likes to get verbose. But we added keep sentences relatively short, no exclamations because exclamations can be a dead giveaway. And then this is going back to the importance of testing as many different variations as possible. This whole section here was me just like learning how it was handling this step and fine tuning it. So oftentimes it would open up the email with a clause, which AI likes to do. As you know, as demand gen leader at Pavilion, I'm focused on driving new memberships. Like that is so AI, Brian. So I had to almost be specific that to not start off with language like as you know, because it almost sounds condescending too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the context matters. So I'll say like the punchline on this whole product that's been put together is, you can see it in each one of these prompts, is that Josh started by having it produce something and then giving it feedback and seeing what it responded to. And really this entire prompt is just a collection of things that you saw it do that you didn't want it to do, and you give it, some negative guidance. Now, negative guidance isn't consistent as positive guidance in AI. Like it's still learning how to take that negative guidance and use it. But I think one of the benefits here is that you got to say don't use or don't do in multiple steps. And so you've been winnowing it down to this point, which is really great.
Yep. And we even gave it an example, to be fair. And this was how it produced the type of formatting that we desired. So again, set the role, you're a friend helping a colleague write a business case email for their peer, because we want this email to be in a friendly format. And then all we told it to do was just make sure you add a few listicles, because listicles can be really skimmable. So we kept this super generic, super simple, and you'll notice that this is generic, this is simple, but then the output took that into account to then write the email for Susan that, again, gave us listicles, but added that extra personalization. She's VP of Revenue Operations, so it's going to help her drive operational excellence across her teams. So, yeah, Brian, this was insane value add, and there's so many different applications to this, not just in our business. So many businesses that need to create some type of level of personalization as to like why somebody should buy their product or why somebody should pitch their product to finance even, which is a very common thing to need to create a business case. So business cases, that's the kind of the foundation, right? To pitching anything is you need a business case, and this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, and this, I think you've given a lot of clues here about how you could, steer those business cases to the particular audience that you're targeting it to, while it's still feeling like it's authentic communication for the individual, or at least that it's so close that with a few edits, they can really get it to something they love.
Absolutely. And to tie it all together, we pass that data into HubSpot. So we say, hey, we want to update a field at the contact level, and that field is custom to this workflow. The field is literally expense template email. So we search for email address in our HubSpot, and then we update the expense membership email from this step, and then the list of benefits from this step. But heck, if I made other fields, I could pass any number of things in here. So let's just say, for example, I wanted to pass the result of the LinkedIn scrape because maybe I have another workflow that's doing the scrape and I want to save on credits. You could steal parts of the workflow. Essentially, like the way I'm thinking about this, Brian, is to save on credits. Let's just say I have one workflow that's designed to scrape a LinkedIn profile and update the job title. I could essentially like do a check and pass in the result of a scrape if it was scraped in the last, let's just say 30 days, and avoid this step altogether, or have this step in lieu of another workflow that has this step. It's just kind of cool how a lot of these things will transfer over between workflows. And ultimately, Brian, I'd like to get to a point where I can have sort of like an AI database for everybody. And maybe that's in HubSpot, maybe that's somewhere else, but that's something that I've just got on my horizon that I've been thinking about.
That's really cool. Well, I think we should do a build in public on that. And let's do, we'll do the couple of levels. So level 1 is use the CRM. But there are a couple levels that you can go to that add sophistication. And I'll just give the punchline here. The real reason is ultimately all of us use our CRMs as the database of record for every system that we use, which is why they get so bloated and there's so many data quality issues, and it becomes so difficult to wrangle that data, every time you have a report or a use case. And so I think CRMs are a great place to begin your build journey. And I definitely think that core outputs like that LinkedIn profile scrape should go into it. And don't limit your creativity with AI to how many fields you can add to your CRM. There are so many ways that you can build your own sort of database for experimentation. So that'll be a fun one to get into.
And well, thanks for hopping on, and thanks for all the guidance on this workflow. I am so pumped to fire this up. In fact, on our next episode, we're going to have a bunch of people use this between now and our next episode. So we'll look back and look at the results, look at the click-through rates, the reply rates, all that stuff of the actual email that we send out to people, and hopefully it helps people get what they need to help get their membership expense, and ultimately gets them across the finish line quicker and more effectively.
Yeah, really excited to see the results. Another great one, Josh. Look forward to the next one.
You too. See ya.
Cheers.